No, I've got time. That's fine. Yeah. Right. So we can do that through and that would be really exciting for somebody that.
നല്ല ഭാഷയും കിട്ടും ടെർമിനൽ കൂട്ടി തൃശ്ശൂർ നല്ലത്
Very unlikely to pass fire time. I'm not the person to ask about the regular time. Oh, but you can. I mean, but there will be.
So when you have to go to the phone to not be upset, not to do viral loss, not to do rebated, you need money. But then you cannot access the airline without having this. So still and finance, what is being done is not
I think probably because sometimes the message gets all mixed up and messed up and lascivious behavior and lust and all of that, so they can't separate those things.
Some slightly more detailed consideration of a very important issue of provider-initiated testing and counselling. That's the HIV testing and counselling in healthcare settings for diagnosis, treatment and care. WHO and UNAIDS will be issuing guidance on this later this year. It is rather important and somewhat a topic of some discussion at this conference.
Thanks, Kevin. Okay, well, open it up. I know that Larry, in a manner, the manner with the kind of balance and the kind of
गणपति बाप्पा Yes, miss.
I don't use this one, all these things I only use.
Somewhere na.
I put water there inside and bring us here. Hey! Down come.
झोका दे ना बस लाइट झोका दे नको हां हे दोरी उडा आणि कंडिशन आहे आहे माहिती उडा ना नाही चांगला वेगळंच त्यांचा काय असं काय नाही मला काय स्वतःला बोला
Like that too?
I don't want to do my idea
Oh my gosh! He probably is. That's what he's showing me. Now he's being self-reliant. You really don't want to lose on that.
one thing we're going to do again this year, last year with our next door neighbors moved down in that relation. The last next November. Because it had snowed on Friday. Snow on the ground. And all the trees and all the trees and the whole town was decorated like we wouldn't see any way.
You can just walk further away. Quiero que salga al bar. Ay, qué linda. Thank you. Mira. I went in the
Back to Delhi. अपना नंबर दीजिए. We're just talking about our first meeting. We talked about pediatric need for pediatrics.
Yeah.
At that time, it wasn't really much in the focus. It has. We have
the statistics on HIV and AIDS. But I think what grounds us in UNICEF is the reality of the issue. And I think as we listen to those statistics, we shouldn't forget the human face behind the numbers. And I think for us, the human face are children who are living and affected by HIV and AIDS, and I think that's what drives our response to HIV. But as Gerrit has said, my key task today is really to give you a highlight, to give you a flavour of what's been happening for the last 3 or 4 days, and try to glean out what difference has the conference made for children. Really, as we walk back or fly back to our countries, what are some of the key messages that we're going to take back, and how is that going to change the lives of children, the lives of families, the lives of boys, the lives of girls, in the way that they themselves are living with HIV/AIDS or affected with HIV and AIDS. When the global organizers of this conference were thinking about preparing for the conference, I think they were particularly at a crossroads. Previously, many of the conferences have focused on adults. There was very little emphasis on children, and I think they need to be applauded for the fact that this particular conference has raised the profile of children, women and girls for the first time. This wasn't the case in Barcelona, it wasn't the case in Bangkok, and as an organization, UNICEF is very proud to be associated with this particular conference, where children and young people have received, I think,
control program, so she will be available for technical questions as well. Mr. Gore.
I'm happy that all of you have come to hear us. This is obviously a very important issue, and we can do with all the help from the media, and I'm glad that all of you are here. I have been involved with films and cricket, the two biggest passions in India, for over 40 years now, and have recently taken over. I have accepted to be the Goodwill Ambassador for UNICEF. And immediately I became this about a year ago, last October. I had the privilege of going to Uganda. When I say it was such a learning curve, I was taken to Uganda and I went to a place called Vigasa. And having lived in India and having traveled all over India, nothing prepared me for what I saw there. I went to this little tiny place, middle of nowhere. It took us about 3 hours on a very bumpy road to get there. There was this child-headed family. Alice, who was only 12 years old, was looking after her 5 younger siblings, and the youngest was about 4 years old. And they'd lost their parents about 2 years ago. And it was, and the nearest neighbor was about a couple of miles away. And of course it was Uganda, so there were a lot of pineapples, and there were a lot of, not pineapple, jackfruit, there was a lot of bananas, so they were not exactly starving. But there was no electricity, there was no water, they had to go miles away to get the water, and they were totally unprotected. And the community came together to help them with clothes occasionally and some food, etc. And the school education was free, but the textbooks, the uniform, that wasn't free. So even that was such a burden on them. And only the boys were going to school, and Alice was cooking and looking after. And it was such a humbling experience. And then of course we laughed and we danced, and how the African spirit was there, which was, she was as normal as anybody else, but in this dire predicament. So, and then we went to another place where there was a grandmother with 21 or 23 grandchildren. 5 of her children had died due to HIV and AIDS, and she was looking after them. And she was older than I, and she was really struggling. And again, there was this lack of resources. And I found the community was very aware in Africa, and they were helping, and of course UNICEF and other organizations. But still, it wasn't enough. And if timely treatment is given to these parents, and if they can live that 20 years longer, it's enough to bring up children. And then this doesn't happen, because these children are open to exploitation, abuse. And in India, when I came back to India again, I, because of UNICEF, met a lot of families. Now in India, the situation is slightly different, because there's a shroud, people are uncomfortable talking about sex or any sex-related disease, and how people. So there's a lot.
From one case in 1986, India today has 5.21 million people living with HIV. The the nation is all set to embark upon the next phase of the National AIDS Control Program, which we popularly call in our country NACP3, with the overall goal to halt and reverse the epidemic over the next 5 years by integrating the program for prevention, care, support, and treatment. To really give you a sense of what this all means, the session today will cover 4 areas, and we have our panelists to shed light on these 4 topics. The satellite session on India will today focus on consolidating gains and talk about the way forward. The main areas covered in the discussion will include 1, overview of...
Thank you, Vidya. My presentation is going to be a little brief because we have a large number of panel speakers, and my attempt, the color in red clearly indicates the states where the prevalence is more than 1% of antenatal mothers have HIV. But then that is just a general mapping. If you really see how in the country as a whole there are small subnational epidemics where there are places and spots where the HIV prevalence could be very defined, that again in the whole country, which was practically didn't have much of HIV, now you find these pink spots emerging which really show that HIV prevalence is less than 1, but do have a potential to increase. Now what we have here is that the national prevalence also marks a subnational epidemic, and I have a small slide here to just give you an idea about how it covers a lot of
commitment, hope, and confidence that is present in this room. This is indeed a very important conference. Today we have come together from all over the world to reflect on the progress made so far in our ongoing battle with HIV and AIDS, and to take fresh stock. This context is crippling poverty combined with inequality, lack of access to quality services, make India more vulnerable to the threat of HIV and AIDS. Allow me to say this, we as a nation love talking. We are very vocal of our politics, transport,
मिलेंगे फिर मैं डेफिनेटली आऊँगा उसको
मेरा एड झालाय का
वाईस चेअरमन आहे
त्यांना 80 लाख वाचून 20 लाखाचं काम करते ते
25 लाख खर्च करायचा होता नाकात
हाँ येतो ना काय प्रॉब्लेम नाही येते बरोबर
We have to get the drugs to the people who need them. We have to put the funding that's needed into ending AIDS now. I want you to let the world hear loud and clear that women and girls will no longer be silenced in this pandemic.
We need more leadership. We need the willingness of leaders to be outspoken on HIV as a leading issue of the day.
HIV has increasingly become a black and brown disease, abroad and domestically.
We have lost an incalculable number of lives which should never have been lost. That's a matter of excruciating pain and unconscionable political neglect, about which historians will one day write.
Ending because of the energy of the people at this event.
This epidemic is 100% preventable.
People will walk away saying that they really did not only people in the developed world, but also people in the developing world that they can take and use in their own countries.
I just want everybody, especially parents, talk to your children. That's the most important thing, I think, when dealing with HIV/AIDS, is communication. Because without that, kids, we're going to be left in the dark.
There's just been so much loss and so much of it unnecessary. Thinking about people I knew, people I've worked with, and it's just sad. Ending AIDS may not be the success of one great scientist, one great community leader, or one great leader. It will be an accomplishment of the whole human family working together for one another.
I'd like to schedule on behalf of all of us who are living with HIV and AIDS.
We're not going away anytime soon. I'm going into my second decade of living with HIV. How and why I'm alive today, I cannot tell you. What I can tell you is that we have still so many more challenges.
And all the people who are living with HIV and all organizations who are concerned on the action.
Universal access to health is a human right. It's immoral, unacceptable, unjust, and outright genocide when the rich people can buy life. And while the poor people are condemned to cruel, unnecessary, untimely, and unjust death.
Нет капитализму. Рыночная система не способна обеспечить всевозрастающую потребности к лечению.
No to capitalism. The market system is unable to give drugs to the people who need them.
Патентом на жизнь. Они должны решать, сколько стоит наша жизнь.
No to the imperialism of the pharmaceutical companies. They should not be deciding the price of our lives.
Joining us for the handover is Helena Georges, who was first elected to the House of Commons as Conservative Party of Canada, member of Simcoe Grey. She is currently the Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of International Trade, as well as our esteemed Mayor of the City of Toronto, Mayor David Phillips.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, you can all hear me. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as the co-chair of the 16th International Conference on AIDS, it is my great honor and duty to announce that Mexico City will host the next international conference in the year 2008, and I now turn our emblematic globe over to its co-chair, Dr. Luis Soto Ramirez, a good friend and a wonderful scientist who will assume the distinction.
पहले तो क्या चांस मिला नहीं मिला हाँ खोले क्या अच्छा वो कैसेट लेके आया मैं खत्म होने पाई निकाले पूरा चलने का। आ रही है चले तो पूरा इंडिया के लोग मालूम है तुम्हें। दिल्ली में क्या अपना फ्लैट है? इंडिया में कहीं भी अपने को टेंशन नहीं, त्रिवेंद्रम से लेकर कन्याकुमारी तक। यहाँ 4 व्हीलर बहुत है ना, ओनली 4 व्हीलर।